In the heart of Europe, amid the ruins of stone and silence, the ghosts of emperors still whisper beneath the Roman sun. Subscribe for more stories that echo through time. Their marble faces are cracked, yet eternal. Their eyes, carved centuries ago, stare through time itself, cold and expressionless, as if power had turned to stone. Rome, the name alone carries the weight of eternity. It was not merely a city. It was a living engine, a mind, a machine, a god dressed in human skin. And at its center stood the emperors, the chosen, the cursed, the self-proclaimed sons of destiny. They built a world so vast it swallowed the horizon, and believed it would never end. But history does not worship, it remembers. And when we remember Rome, we do not recall only the marble, or the legions, or the triumphs. We remember the men who wore the purple, men who ruled with divine ambition, who burned with madness, and who watched their empire fade beneath their own hands. It began with a knife. The day Julius Caesar fell, Rome killed not a man, but the illusion of the republic. The senators who struck him down believed they were saving freedom, yet in his blood, the seed of empire took root. Chaos followed, civil wars, betrayal, the death of the old order. And from that chaos, one man rose above the ashes, Octavian, the adopted son of Caesar, a boy of strategy, not fire, a man who learned from his father's death that power should never appear as power. He took the name Augustus, the revered one, and reshaped Rome without ever admitting he had done so. He preserved the Senate, the assemblies, the rituals, the theater of democracy. But behind the curtain, all roads led to him. He ruled through image, through symbolism, through quiet control. Temples were raised in his honor. His face appeared on every coin. The republic lived in name, but its heartbeat belonged to the emperor. Augustus understood something the modern world still struggles to learn: that power is most dangerous when it wears a smile. And so began the imperial age, not through tyranny, but through acceptance. Rome wanted peace, stability, purpose, and in Augustus, it found a father. The people traded liberty for order, chaos for comfort, and in that trade, the empire was born. Under Augustus, Rome bloomed like never before. Marble replaced brick, roads stretched like veins across continents. Legions marched from Britain to Syria, carrying not just swords, but culture, law, architecture, language. Each conquest became another stone in the monument to Roman eternity. His successors, Tiberius, Claudius, Trajan, Hadrian, each added new chapters to the myth. They built walls to tame the edges of the world. They raised aqueducts that turned deserts into gardens. They filled the empire with echoes of Rome, miniature replicas of its grandeur scattered across 3 continents. For generations, emperors ruled as gods in human form. Their portraits adorned temples. Their decrees were sacred. They were the bridge between heaven and earth, the human reflection of divine will. But the divine has a price. Then came Caligula, born in privilege, raised among daggers. He began as the golden child of Rome. The city adored him. The legions worshipped him. But adoration is a drug stronger than any poison. Within 4 years, the emperor who was once loved turned into a living nightmare. He declared himself a god. He spoke to the moon, made his horse a consul, and ordered statues of himself to stand beside Jupiter's. He drained the treasury to build floating palaces and theaters of cruelty. Those who questioned him vanished. He was not mad from birth. He was made mad by the weight of the crown. Nero followed, and if Caligula burned mines, Nero burned cities. In the summer of 64 AD, Rome caught fire. The flames devoured entire districts. And as the smoke rose, rumors whispered that the emperor himself had ordered it to rebuild the city in his image. They said he played the lyre while watching the inferno, composing music for his own apocalypse. Nero's reign ended in chaos and blood. He fled the city he once ruled, abandoned by the Senate, condemned by the people. When the end came, he whispered, "What an artist dies in me," and took his own life. With his death, the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the bloodline of Augustus, was gone. The throne of Rome became a curse. Emperors rose and fell like sparks in the dark. Each one declared himself savior. Each one ended in betrayal. The Praetorian Guard, the emperor's own protectors, became kingmakers, selling the empire to the highest bidder. Power had become currency. Loyalty, illusion. And yet Rome endured. Even in madness, its institutions adapted. Under emperors like Vespasian and Titus, stability returned, for a time. The Colosseum was built not just as a monument, but as a message that Rome could turn violence into spectacle, and spectacle into control. But the seeds of decay were already in the soil. Commodus, son of the philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius, believed himself to be Hercules reborn. He dressed as a gladiator, renamed months after himself, and turned the empire into a theater of vanity. Under his rule, the Senate cowered, the people grew restless, and the myth of Rome began to fracture. When Commodus was strangled by his own servant, few mourned him, but his death marked something larger, the beginning of the end. The empire had become an echo of its own greatness, a machine devouring itself. By the 3rd century, Rome's heart was breaking. Borders collapsed, plagues spread, armies rebelled. In one 50-year span, more than 20 emperors rose and fell, most through assassination. The empire was too large, too fractured, too tired. Diocletian tried to save it. He divided the empire into East and West, believing 2 emperors could rule what one could not. For a moment, it worked, but every division carries a prophecy of separation. The East grew stronger, the West grew weaker. And when Constantine saw a cross of light in the sky and marched beneath it, Rome itself changed its soul. The old gods fell silent. The temples of Jupiter and Mars grew cold. In their place rose the churches of Christ. The empire that once worshipped the pantheon now bowed before a single god, and the emperor became his servant, not his equal. Some called it salvation, others called it surrender. By the 5th century, the Western Empire was dying in slow motion. Its emperors were children, its generals warlords, its legions mercenaries who no longer believed in Rome, only in gold. Barbarian tribes pressed through the frontiers, Goths, Vandals, Huns, and the empire that had once conquered the world found itself surrounded by ghosts. In 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. The Visigoths sacked the Eternal City. For the first time in 8 centuries, Rome fell to foreign hands. The empire survived in name, but its soul was gone. When the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed in 476, the moment passed almost quietly. No battle cry, no final stand, only the whisper of an age ending. A boy emperor dethroned by a barbarian general. Rome, the immortal, was mortal after all. But history does not die, it transforms. The Eastern Empire, Byzantium, endured for another 1,000 years. Speaking Greek, ruling from Constantinople, its emperors called themselves Romans. Even as the West sank into medieval darkness, they built cathedrals where temples once stood, libraries where legions once marched. They preserved what the West had forgotten: law, literature, architecture. And when Byzantium finally fell in 1453, its torch passed again, to new empires claiming the Roman legacy: the Ottomans, the Holy Roman Empire, the British, the Americans, because Rome was never just a place. It was an idea, the promise of civilization bound by order and power. Every empire that followed borrowed its language, its symbols, its myths: the eagle, the Senate, the Republic, the Empire. Look closely, and Rome still lives. In Washington's Capitol dome, modeled after the Pantheon. In the Latin words carved into courthouses and universities. In the faces of leaders who speak of destiny, of greatness, of eternal order. The Roman dream, and its nightmare, flow quietly beneath the surface of modern power. The emperors may be gone, but their reflection remains. They taught the world that glory is addictive, that authority must perform to survive, that propaganda can outlive truth. They ruled by image, just as leaders do today, through screens instead of statues, through spectacle instead of decree. Rome fell not in one night, but over centuries, eroded by wealth, division, arrogance, and indifference. And yet, even in ruin, it inspired the rebirth of the West. Its ashes fertilized the Renaissance. Its laws shaped the modern state. Its shadow still defines our architecture, our governments, our faith in permanence. But permanence is the greatest illusion of all. Every empire begins with a whisper, and ends in an echo. The emperors of Rome once believed they were gods walking among men. Today, their statues crumble, Their names survive only in history books and half-remembered prayers. And still, we build new empires, raise new monuments, repeat their words. We promise that this time will be different. That power will not corrupt. That peace will last. That our empire will endure. But marble cracks, steel rusts, ideals decay. And so, the question remains, the same one that haunted Rome as the fires rose. If the greatest empire in history could fall at the height of its glory, what makes us believe we won't do the same? If this story made you reflect, like the video and subscribe for what's next.